Did you know that nearly 40% of Americans identify as independents, not fully left or right? Or that in the last 30 years, the world has seen more political shifts than in the previous 100 years combined? These shocking numbers show just how quickly politics are changing, and how much we still don't understand about the left and right wings. So, why do we divide ourselves into left-wing and right-wing camps? Is it as simple as we think, or is there more going on? In this video, we're diving deep into the history of political spectrums, the hidden ideologies most people miss, and the surprising forces that shape our beliefs. Stick around as we unravel the real reasons why we choose sides in politics, and why the divide might be changing faster than you realize. Ready to see politics in a whole new light? Let's dive in. Chapter 1: The Roots of the Divide. Where did left versus right begin? The terms left-wing and right-wing didn't come out of nowhere. They have a surprisingly interesting origin. The first use of these labels dates back to the French Revolution in 1789. Members of the National Assembly were split between those who supported the monarchy, the right, and those who wanted a republic, the left. This physical seating arrangement marked the birth of a political divide that would stick for centuries. Fast forward to today, and those terms still shape how we talk about politics, even though they've expanded far beyond their French origins. The left typically supports more government intervention in the economy, while the right champions free market capitalism. Over time, these simple ideas have turned into complex belief systems, but the divide remains central to politics in countries around the world. The terms evolved during the 19th century as political systems grew more complex. Think about the US Civil War. The North, Union, supported abolition and stronger government, while the South, Confederacy, pushed for state rights and a traditional social order. This left-right divide continued to grow, especially as global power structures shifted. Interestingly, these labels aren't always universal. For example, in the United States, the left is associated with the Democratic Party, but in Europe, some parties on the left are more radical or socialist, like the UK's Labour Party. It's a great reminder that political terms can shift depending on context and geography. Today, the left-right spectrum is not just about economics. It also touches on social issues, with the left often advocating for progressive policies, like equal rights, healthcare, and climate change action. Meanwhile, the right is more likely to push for traditional values, law and order, and national security. Chapter 2: Beyond Left and Right, the hidden ideological spectrum. While the left and right wings dominate political discussions, the truth is, there's so much more to explore. Enter the hidden ideological spectrum. Instead of simply identifying as a Democrat or Republican, many people fall somewhere in between, or somewhere else entirely. You might be a moderate who wants a bit of both, or even a libertarian who believes in minimal government. One thing to remember is that political beliefs are multidimensional. The idea of a two-party system is a common myth. For example, libertarians believe in free markets but also in minimal government intervention in personal freedoms. On the opposite end, authoritarian thinkers believe in a strong state that controls both the economy and social behavior. The political compass is a great tool for visualizing these ideas. It goes beyond the standard left-right scale, adding another axis for authority versus freedom. It gives a more accurate picture of where people stand, as shown in recent studies. For example, a poll conducted by the Pew Research Center found that nearly 40% of Americans identify as moderates, which doesn't align neatly with the common left-right labels. Take a look at politics globally. In some European countries, the far-right parties emphasize national identity and immigration control, while far-left parties push for wealth redistribution and stronger social safety nets. This shows that the spectrum can change dramatically depending on the region and the issue at hand. Another layer is how people's political ideologies can change over time. A study in political behavior revealed that 31% of people switch political parties at least once in their lives. That suggests that while you might lean left or right at one point, you could find yourself swaying in a completely different direction a decade later. Moreover, in the digital age, ideologies are no longer tied to traditional political party lines. Movements like #MeToo or Black Lives Matter blur these boundaries. They push for changes in culture and society that don't fit into the neat boxes of left or right. Chapter 3: The Red versus Blue Myth. Is the divide really so simple? We've all heard it, the red states versus the blue states. But here's the catch: that simple divide often oversimplifies things. The US presidential election map has been painted in red and blue for decades, but many voters are neither purely red nor blue. According to Gallup, in 2020, 43% of Americans identified as independents. They're not fully left or right, and they reject that binary division. Take 2020 as an example. While President Biden's victory was hailed as a blue wave, many red-leaning states saw significant shifts in favor of the Democrats. Arizona and Georgia, historically conservative states, turned blue for the first time in decades. This shift shows that politics are fluid, and simple color coding doesn't tell the whole story. There's also the issue of single-issue politics. Many voters don't follow an entire party platform. Instead, they vote based on a specific issue that resonates with them, such as climate change, gun control, or healthcare reform. This is particularly evident in swing states, where voters flip between parties depending on who best addresses their concerns at a given time. The red versus blue map doesn't account for the wide range of beliefs that exist within those states. In places like California and Texas, a significant number of voters lean both left and right. It's a reminder that even in red or blue states, there are deep divides among voters, and many may lean toward a more centrist position. Moreover, the left and right wings don't always align with other issues, like religion or education. For instance, while the right tends to emphasize religious values, the left often supports secularism. But even within these groups, opinions differ on how much religion should influence politics. Some left-wingers may support religious freedoms, while some right-wingers may advocate for more secular policies. Lastly, don't forget about the power of local politics. In many cases, local issues outweigh national party lines. A conservative-leaning area may vote for a progressive mayor if they believe in their local economic or social policies. This shows that while national politics may be divided, the local level can offer a much more mixed perspective. If you enjoyed this chapter, don't forget to hit the subscribe button so you don't miss the next deep dive into how politics really works. Chapter 4, The Psychology of Politics, Why We Choose Our Sides. Why do we choose the political side we do? It's not just about the issues, it's also about psychology. Research has shown that political ideologies are deeply tied to how we process the world around us. According to the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology, people's political leanings are linked to their personality traits. Those who lean right tend to prefer order and stability, while those on the left may value equality and change more. Another factor that plays a big role is social identity. Psychologist Henry Tajfel's social identity theory explains that we categorize ourselves into groups. These groups can include political parties, and once we identify with one, we're more likely to stick with it, even if new information challenges our views. It's a way of fitting in and feeling connected to a broader community, even if that means ignoring inconvenient facts. Interestingly, emotions are also a powerful force in politics. Studies show that strong feelings like anger, fear, and excitement often drive political decisions. A 2016 Harvard study revealed that people are more likely to vote when they feel emotionally stirred, rather than when they are simply logically convinced. Cognitive biases, too, shape our political views. The confirmation bias makes us more likely to seek information that supports our existing beliefs. It's why we tend to follow social media accounts or read news outlets that align with our views, even if it means ignoring sources that might challenge them. Our upbringing also plays a role. If you grew up in a conservative family, it's likely you'll lean that way as an adult, while those raised in more liberal environments often follow suit. However, the life cycle effect shows that our political ideologies can change as we grow older and experience different life stages. At its core, political psychology shows us that our choices aren't always about facts or logic. Sometimes, they are deeply rooted in emotions, identity, and even the way we see ourselves in society. Chapter 5, Wings of Change, The Power of Political Shifts. Politics is never static. It's in constant flux, and we're seeing that more than ever today. The left-right divide may seem permanent, but history teaches us otherwise. Political spectrums change in response to major events, like wars, economic crises, or social movements, and these shifts can happen quickly. Take the 20th century, for example. The rise of social democracies in Europe following World War II was a game-changer. Before the war, many European countries had monarchies or authoritarian regimes. But after the war, democratic socialism gained momentum, leading to the creation of welfare states in countries like the UK, France, and Sweden. It was a profound shift toward the left, driven by the desire for equality and security. In the United States, we've seen political shifts during major events too. The Great Depression in the 1930s led to a major swing to the left, with the implementation of Roosevelt's New Deal policies. These policies expanded the role of government in the economy, reshaping the political landscape for decades. But as the economy recovered and issues like inflation arose in the 1970s, many turned to conservative ideas, pushing the political pendulum back to the right. The rise of populism in the last decade is another example of a political shift. Populist leaders, from Donald Trump to Jair Bolsonaro, have reshaped the political spectrum by focusing on nationalism, anti-elitism, and strong anti-immigration policies. These changes reflect a broader shift away from traditional, centrist politics toward more extreme positions. In the past, political shifts were often tied to specific issues, such as war, economics, or class struggles. Today, however, issues like climate change, identity politics, and digital technology are having an outsized impact. The recent global protests for racial justice and climate action show that politics can be driven by a mix of new concerns, not just traditional ideologies. But political change isn't always quick or smooth. It often takes time, with gradual shifts over years or even decades. For instance, the gay rights movement in the US took decades to achieve significant wins, like the legalization of same-sex marriage in 2015. The lesson here is clear: political shifts are not only inevitable but also necessary. As societies change, their political ideologies must adapt too. Chapter 6: Redefining the Divide. Could the political spectrum be changing? We've long understood politics in terms of the left-right divide, but is that model still relevant today? Many experts believe the political spectrum is evolving, and new ideologies are emerging. Today's politics are much more complicated than just liberal versus conservative. Take, for example, the increasing prominence of populism. This has been particularly noticeable in the US, Brazil, and Hungary. Populist leaders claim to represent the common people, and criticize elites and political institutions. What's fascinating is that populism doesn't always align with traditional left-right categories. Leaders like Trump and Bolsonaro both appeal to conservative values but also challenge the political establishment, showing that a new, hybrid ideology is on the rise. Another factor changing the political spectrum is technology. The rapid rise of social media and digital platforms has transformed how politics is discussed and organized. The traditional ways of campaigning, like TV ads and speeches, are being replaced by tweets, viral videos, and online petitions. This digital shift has led to new political movements that are less tied to traditional party lines and more focused on single issues, like climate change or data privacy. Moreover, the global rise of climate activism is pushing politics in new directions. The Green New Deal, for example, is a policy proposal that blends progressive ideals with environmental responsibility. It's something that doesn't fit neatly into the traditional left-right divide. While the left traditionally supports environmentalism, the Green New Deal adds an economic twist, arguing that tackling climate change is not only a moral necessity but an economic opportunity. Another sign that the traditional political spectrum may be outdated is the growing divide between globalism and nationalism. Globalists argue for increased international cooperation, open borders, and a focus on global issues like climate change. On the other hand, nationalists emphasize the importance of protecting national identity, jobs, and culture. These two ideologies don't fit neatly into the left-right divide. Finally, economic shifts are also challenging the old categories. The rise of automation and AI, for example, is shaking up how we think about labor, the economy, and government intervention. Some economists argue for universal basic income (UBI) as a way to support workers displaced by technology. This idea, though supported by some on the left, also finds support among libertarians and even some conservatives, showing that economic policies are becoming more cross-ideological. Ultimately, the political spectrum is changing, and it's becoming more fragmented and diverse. We're moving away from a simple left-right divide and into a more nuanced understanding of political ideologies. While the traditional categories aren't disappearing entirely, they're certainly evolving to reflect the complexities of the modern world. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you can stay updated with all our latest videos diving deep into the world of politics. Thanks for watching.